Hello, ma'am. Good morning
Hi, good morning.
and Happy New Year.
And yeah, thank you. Same to you.
Thank you.
So we were looking at general defenses under law of torts. There are 8 defenses, and we discussed first 4: voluntary non-fit injuria or defense of consent. If I have given consent, later on I cannot claim damages for the loss that I have suffered. It's nothing but voluntarily exposing myself to some sort of a risk wherein there was actually no need to expose myself, but I still did it. So later on, I should not claim for compensation. The wrongdoer is the plaintiff. Plaintiff is only filing a case, and he was only the one who did something wrong. So there also he cannot claim for damages. Inevitable accident. An accident which could not have been prevented even after taking due care and precautions. There also, we would say that it is inevitable accident, something that could not be prevented by the person. There, it will act as a defense. Act of God, vis major or force major, wherein nature is playing its part. It's also same like inevitable accident. We could not prevent it because it's something which was unexpected, which we could not foresee that this kind of a rainfall or this sort of a tide would take place, but it did. That is nothing but act of God or vis major or force major. Next one we have is private defense or self-defense. So what is private defense or self-defense? It applies in 2 different situations. Okay, it applies for protection of body as well as property. Like you will see in Unit 3 there, or Unit 4, they mention different types of torts based on whether it's affecting a person's body, it's affecting a person's property, it's affecting a person's reputation. Like that, it's divided. Okay, so when we talk about private defense, it applies to body and property, protection of body as well as property of our own self plus somebody else also. It's not just for protection of our own self, even though we say self defense, but we can protect someone else also by using this right. Okay, now protection of body and property of somebody else's as well as our own, we can use force. Okay, so law gives permission to protect one's life and property, and for that, it has allowed to use reasonable force to protect himself and his property. Now, this is the reason why we see in public places, sometimes we see, right? Maybe some strangers are fighting, 2 persons are fighting, and the entire population would go there in order to resolve the dispute, to separate them, to stop the fight, even though they do not know each other. So what they are doing, all those other people are trying to protect body of that somebody else, because 2 persons were fighting, they wanted to stop that fight. This is nothing but private defense or self defense, and it is justified. We do not take action against those people simply because they tried to stop the fight. Okay, so this is nothing but private defense or self defense. And in general, what happens is we cannot take law in our own hands, right? We have police, we have the courts. If something goes wrong, we can go to the court and file a case, but we should not take law in our own hands. We should not try to provide justice to us, but rather court will provide justice. But private defense is like an exceptional situation wherein law itself gives us permission that we can protect our own life and property. And for protection of life and property, what we can do is we can even use reasonable force, but this is important. We can use force, but it has to be reasonable.
So
Now,
basically, this reasonable force depends on a case-to-case basis, isn't it,
yes,
ma'am?
the force would depend on case to case basis. Okay, that is why we say reasonable force. What is reasonable in a given situation might not be reasonable in another situation. So, depending on the situation, we need to use force. The use of force is justified only for the purpose of self-defense. Now, this is very important. We are allowed to use force, but it will be only and only for the purpose of self-defense. If today somebody comes and tells me that, maybe somebody calls me and says that after 4 days I will kidnap you. In that case, what is happening? I have enough time, right? After 4 days only that person will kidnap me. I have this 4 days duration to go to the police station, file an FIR. In such a case, I should not go to that person's house and be like, how can you say like that, and use force. That will not be reasonable, because I had the option of going to the police and filing an FIR. So there it's not justified. So when is it justified? It's justified for the purpose of self-defense. Plus, in what situation? There should be an imminent threat to a person's life or property. Immediate threat is there. I am apprehending that right now, right here, the person will cause me harm if I do not do something. That's where self-defense would be applicable. So if somebody says, I will kidnap you after 4 days, right now there is no threat that I am apprehending. After 4 days only, what will happen will happen. So in such cases, it's not applicable. But if someone is present in front of me and the person says that if you do not give me your mobile phone, what I will do is I will cause you harm. In such a case, it is nothing but imminent threat. Right now itself, the person is present in front of me. If I do not give my mobile phone to that person, the person will cause harm or loss to me. This is nothing but imminent threat to a person's life or property, wherein we can say that self-defense would be applicable. Because if I do not take an action right now, I will suffer the injury, loss, or whatsoever it is. This is where private defense or self-defense is applicable. Okay, so the force, whatever I am using, it will be justified only for the purpose of self-defense, and also it will be justified only in case of imminent threat only, not otherwise. For example, A would not be justified in using force against B just because he believes that someday he will be attacked by B. So someday will not justify self-defense, because for someday we have the option of approaching the police or approaching the concerned body. But for imminent threat, we do not have any option. We need to take law in our own hands, and we need to use reasonable force in order to protect our body or property, or maybe somebody else's body or property. The force used must be reasonable and to repel an imminent danger. So whatever force I am using, that has to be reasonable. It should justify the situation, justify the threat that I was apprehending. And it should be used in order to prevent or in order to stop an imminent danger that I was apprehending. Okay, for example, if A tried to commit a robbery in the house of B, and B just drew his sword and chopped his head, then this act of A would not be justified, and the defense of private defense cannot be pleaded. So it has to be reasonable, right? If someone is trying to slap me with his bare hands, I cannot take out a gun and shoot him. Maybe what I can do at max, I can push that person, right? Or I can maybe hit him with something. So it depends on the situation, what kind of a risk or what kind of a harm I was apprehending, or how much force was the other person applying. So simple threat that I was apprehending, for that I cannot kill the other person, because that will not be reasonable. So we are allowed to use force, but what is the purpose of this force? Purpose is self-defense only. We need to somehow escape from that situation. Okay, we don't want to give justice, or we don't want to teach a lesson to the other person, but only purpose why force is allowed is to escape from that situation. So to escape from that situation, how much ever force is needed, only that much force will be justified in self-defense. For the protection of property also, the law has only allowed taking such measures which are necessary to prevent the danger. When we talk about property, protection of property, there also court allows us to take measures which are necessary to prevent the danger, which would be needed in order to protect our property or someone else's property. When we talk about protecting our property or protecting our houses from thieves, robbers, or dacoits, what can we do? There also we cannot put a trap or something that the person would die if he comes to steal something from our property. That thing is not justified. Okay, what is justified is some reasonable steps we can take. Maybe we can lock the door, lock the gate all the time. Nobody would come and question us. Why? Because that is a measure taken in order to protect our property. Same ways you might have seen fixing broken glass pieces on the wall. Have you seen that?
Yes.
That is also nothing but a step taken, a reasonable step taken in order to protect a person's property. Okay, so that will also be justified. Apart from that, you will see in some houses, they would say that this dog is under duty, like be aware of
Yes.
dogs, like that you would see, right? So aggressive
Yes.
dog, some people would even put a picture of the dog also. That's it, this is the dog that is protecting us. So all these things are nothing but measures taken in order to protect a person's property. Some people might say that you are under CCTV surveillance. Nothing but again, whatever you are doing is being recorded. So you need to behave properly. So these are nothing but some reasonable steps taken in order to protect a person's property. Okay, and that will be justified. When we talk about private defense, the force that is used should not be more than what is needed. If more force is used than what was needed, like a person trying to slap with bare hands, he was the other one took out a pistol and killed him. In such a case, it will not be justified. So it has to be always based on the situation, based on the threat that was apprehended. It should be reasonable. How much was needed in order to protect or in order to escape from that situation, that much only we should be using. Okay, is this part clear?
Yes.
So private defense is also something that you get as a defense in criminal law also. There also we should use reasonable amount of force only. For both body and property, it can be used.
Okay.